Michael Cardaci is the CEO of FedHIVE. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining me. It's a big three that people are thinking about when it comes to cloud security: performance, cost, security. How do you advise people to try to strike a balance among those three to get the ultimate of each of those?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me here today. Yeah, the balance is, there's a spectrum. High security, very slow; low security, very fast, and trying to find what's the right parameter for the agency or their specific data or what their mission is to try and work on that balance. And you want an organization that is kind of growing through this process from early on to now. We've been doing this for 30 years now, where the security issues that are showing up with AI and all the other issues and automation and all those things, we have to keep pace. We can't just sit on our laurels. So we have to engage with the government, understand what their needs are. How they need to consume it is one of the biggest things, right? So we can do things as industry, but then the government has to be able to interact with that.
What is encouraging to me about what you just said is it sounds like it's not a riff on the old line, performance, cost, security, pick two. Like all three are possible if one can find the right balance on that slider, is what I kind of envision in
Uh,
my mind.
Absolutely. It's really trying to, again, really understand what the mission is trying to do,
Mhm.
because data has a spectrum. Some is really needs to be secure, and some is not quite so. So the mission owner and has to decide that, and industry has to work with them on an ongoing basis at the pace that they need, which is increasingly going faster and faster and faster.
What are the considerations that organizations and government should think about to decide where on that slider or on that spectrum they should land as far as their mission goes, as far as their infrastructure goes, and all of that?
Typically, we look at the volume of folks that it affects, and then to what extent that data, because it could be a very small amount of people but affect them, greatly, or it can be a large amount that affects them moderately. And so those are the things, kind of the parameters that you want to look at, and you kind of graph that out of where that data sits for the mission.
The wrinkle that is coming into some of this, I imagine, is the modernization efforts that agencies are undertaking. There's more discussion about moving to the cloud, probably than there has been since the cloud first became a thing,
Yeah.
because of the administration's push to use commercial solutions for things. How's that impacting the way that these organizations should think about what they're doing?
Well, the administration is trying to bring innovation into the government. I mean, that's great. But there's also this bar that affects the government slightly different than out in the commercial world, right? Because you have lots of these small and mid-sized organizations out in the commercial world that they could be affected by these security issues, where the government really has only one shot at it, right? Like they have these broad amounts of data that they have to protect for the U.S. citizens, and that kind of changes the level of intensity for folks, right? So now they're trying to push into the cloud. We need to make sure those those hyperscalers are really secure in the commercial space, in addition to just the gov spaces. And the government's relooking at that distribution too. That's a spectrum. How much is on-prem? How much is a private cloud? How much is in a hyperscaler? And what is that for the security level for that agency?
When the government first started to use the cloud, it was primarily, this is my brain
Yeah.
thinking this, it seemed like they were using it primarily as just a big hard drive. It was a place to store a lot of data, but not necessarily a place to work. That's obviously changed dramatically over
Yeah.
the last 10 years,
Yep.
15 years. What's the implication of that for the way that organizations are thinking about security, or should be thinking about security?
Well, in that time frame when it was just we're moving data to the cloud, you have to have this bubble around it. Well, now with access from the people to actually do the working job day in, day out, and then not just at government sites, but from home or from remote sites and that sort of thing. So now you have more people accessing these clouds from different areas, and that's adding to the security posture that you need to deal with.
So far, we've talked about kind of where we have come from and where we are today. What do you see moving forward, both trend-wise for the cloud itself, but then securing whatever it is that the government decides to do moving forward?
Well, the government's accelerated some of their compliance frameworks, and I know there's been a lot of conjecture and frustration about a lot of different of these frameworks. But you know, the FedRAMP 20X, for instance, I think it's going in the right direction. The idea of not just having a moment in time, but actually having an ongoing understanding of what the health of security is. So I think that's the right direction. I think it'll all shake out eventually, but I think that's the direction things have to go, is almost real time or as close to that as possible. So everybody understands what their risk posture is right now with regard to their systems.
That concept of friction is something that I hear. I hear that word used more in this space in the federal government than any other area. Why do you think that is?
You know, again, the government has, you know, a limited appetite for mistakes, right? It can't just have a small set of data that gets attacked. It's a large organization. You know, it's one of the biggest you know, industries in the U.S., right? That sort of thing. So it's got a lot of data, and I think the friction, and there's always going to be friction with the government because of that issue. They're trying to move faster and faster of getting people in and vetting them, and then it's not just the first time, it's an ongoing thing, so that with each one that they add, they got to keep watching that one, we're adding another one, and that sort of thing. So there is friction. I think it's getting faster, and everybody's trying to look at innovative ways to make that faster, but there's always going to be some friction, right? Because on that spectrum,
Yeah.
security versus no security.
Quick final thought. What do you see on the horizon that you tell the folks that you talk to in government they should be paying attention to now for some future point?
The operational security as opposed to the documented security, right? It's really about what the organization's doing, what they're looking towards from for the future for their security. How is industry coming to them and saying, here's where we're being proactive. We're not just being reactive to what your requirements are.